The first report came from a patrol moving through the narrow passes above Tsanger village, where the mountains rose like jagged black teeth against the star-blotted sky. Staff Sergeant Keller had radioed in an unusual sighting just after dusk, his voice strained but steady. He said he saw lights deep inside a cave mouth across the valley, lights that flickered like lanterns but didn't move or sway. They just stared back at him. The radio transcript recovered later described them as twin burning embers floating in perfect stillness, like something ancient watching from behind the stone. No one believed him at first. Kunar had a way of warping perception, twisting the seams of reality with its sheer immensity. Shadows stretched too far. Wind carried whispers across miles. Even the night sky felt thicker, heavier, as if the stars themselves leaned closer to listen. The younger soldiers joked that the mountains had their own eyes and their own appetite, but Keller wasn't joking. His voice had none of the usual bravado. It trembled at the edges as if something cold was leaking into him. By the following morning, the platoon found him at the mouth of the pass, kneeling in the gravel with his rifle across his lap and his eyes wide open. He breathed but he did not blink. He looked past the men who tried shaking him, past the rising sun, past everything in the world that should have mattered. When they carried him back to the outpost, his eyes followed the distant ridges as if they pulled him with invisible thread. Classified medical logs later wrote, pupils dilated beyond normal tolerances. No reaction to light. Subject appears to be looking at something far away, though no object is present. The phrase repeated 3 times, subject believes he is being watched. Later that week, another patrol saw the lights. Corporal Henley whispered it first, pointing across a ravine toward a cliff face scarred with old Soviet blast craters. 2 points of amber radiance glowed from within a crack barely wider than a doorway. They did not flicker like flame. They pulsed like a heartbeat. Those aren't reflectors, Henley whispered. They're focusing on us. The radio log captured the tremor in his voice. He breathed like prey cornered in an open field. The lights disappeared a moment later, drifting backward into the depths of the mountain as if consumed by the earth itself. Henley begged the squad leader not to make them cross the pass. He insisted that the lights were not a trick of dust or stress. He said the mountains had learned their names. When they returned to the outpost the following night, Henley didn't sleep. He sat upright in his bunk, staring at the far wall, murmuring that they shouldn't shine flashlights into the dark anymore. It shines back, he said. It sees where you are and it comes closer. His handwriting in the recon logbook grew erratic. At the bottom of the final entry, written at an angle almost carved into the page, were the words, "The eyes move. The mountain remembers." Rumors grew like mold in humid air. Some said Keller whispered at night in a language no one recognized. Others claimed Henley wandered the perimeter before dawn, stopping every few minutes to look toward the ridgelines with an unnatural stillness that set off motion sensors. The medic on duty wrote that his pulse slowed when he stared into the mountains, as if syncing with something deeper, older. Then came the intercepted transmissions. Radio command routed them into a classified archive, labeling them anomalous frequency bursts #1739. The audio was degraded, filled with static like wind howling through hollow bone, but beneath the interference were fragments of English spoken by soldiers who had never transmitted anything that day. Voices said things like, "They're waiting inside. They know the sound of our fear. We saw the eyes again. Closer this time." One transmission contained a phrase that chilled every analyst who heard it: "You don't walk into the mountains. They walk into you." Patrol after patrol reported movement in places where nothing should have lived. In the dead hours before dawn, machine gun teams swore they saw human silhouettes standing on distant ridges, motionless, facing the outpost with unwavering attention. But under thermal vision, no heat signatures appeared. They were colder than the rock around them. Special Recon Team Echo was assigned to investigate a cluster of caves along the upper ridgeline. Their body cam footage was later classified and buried under layers of restricted access. A few recovered frames survived. They showed narrow passages etched with deep vertical gouges, as if something enormous had clawed its way upward from the Earth's core. The deeper they went, the stranger the rock formations became. Patterns resembling eye sockets, dozens of them, appeared carved into the stone. Private First Class Monroe whispered on camera, "Someone's watching us from behind the walls." Echo never made it out of the cave. Hours later, their locator beacons activated again, 3 miles deeper into the mountain than possible on foot. A rescue team attempted to follow but turned back after 20 minutes, reportedly overwhelmed by a growing sense of suffocation, like invisible hands pressed against their chests. Logs described it as oppressive atmospheric pressure inconsistent with altitude. Unofficially, one soldier said the air felt alive. By the end of the week, the pattern was unmistakable. Anyone who saw the glowing eyes became quiet, then distracted, then drawn toward the mountains as if compelled by something ancient whispering beneath the rock. The mountains were feeding, the chaplain said. Feeding on terror. Feeding on minds. And something inside them was waking up. The final days of Outpost Sparrow began with a single disappearance. Henley was gone at dawn. His gear remained neatly folded. His boots sat by his cot. His rifle lay across his blanket with a single round chambered. The only clue was a trail of bare footprints leading away from the outpost gate, straight toward the cliffs where Echo vanished. Thermal drones spotted him hours later, walking calmly up a rocky path that no human should have been able to climb. The footage captured something horrifying. He never looked down, never stumbled, never hesitated. His eyes stared straight ahead, unblinking, reflecting the faint golden glow of distant cave mouths. Reports from the drone team noted a second glow behind him, a pair of lights emerging from the darkness like guiding beacons. A third. Then a fourth. Command ordered a fire mission to cut off his path. Artillery screamed through the sky and shattered against the ridge, throwing up dust and flame. When it cleared, Henley was gone. The lights still hovered inside the mountain, untouched. That night, Sparrow's perimeter sensors detected figures moving across multiple ridges in perfect unison, each pair of glowing eyes appearing and disappearing with impossible speed, as if the mountains themselves had learned to shift shape. The chaplain read from an old text describing jinn born from smokeless fire, ancient beings said to dwell beneath the Hindu Kush long before any tribe settled the valleys. He warned that these entities were older than myth, older than the stone they hid within. The interpreter from Tsanger village confirmed the legends. His grandmother called them the Deep Watchers. Not spirits. Not demons. Something older, something that fed on dread like a living substance. His voice shook when he said, "They watch from behind the world." At 0230 hours, the outpost received its final transmission. A soldier whispered into the radio, though the speaker could not be identified. His voice was slow, almost hypnotized. "They don't take your body," he said. "They take your fear. And when you follow the fear long enough, you walk into them." The lights appeared again on the ridge. Dozens of them this time, forming a line like a row of ancient eyes peering down from the heavens. The mountain air vibrated with a low hum that rattled ammo crates and shook the latches of armored doors. By sunrise, Sparrow was silent. No bodies remained. No signs of struggle. Only footprints leading into the caves. Bare footprints. Hundreds of them. A recovery team arrived 48 hours later. They expected an ambush, booby traps, the usual aftermath of an overrun outpost. What they found was worse. Every wall of Sparrow was etched with scratches, long horizontal lines spaced evenly as if marking time. Thousands of them. The marks burrowed into steel, stone, even Kevlar plating. Analysts later wrote, scratches consistent with mineral erosion, not human tools. But the spacing suggested intention. The team followed the footprints leading to the cliffs, though every instinct begged them to turn back. The air grew colder. The wind stopped entirely. Even the sun's warmth seemed unable to touch the stone. They heard whispers from places no wind could reach. Some were English. Some were not. A cave entrance yawned ahead. From within, the faintest glow pulsed like a heartbeat. The team entered, their footsteps echoing in cold corridors older than any recorded civilization. Cavern walls appeared almost sculpted, shaped into spirals and grooves resembling primitive eyes stacked in ascending rows. One soldier muttered, "This place is watching us." Their lights caught movement at the far end of the tunnel. Not creatures. Not shapes. Us. Rows of them, glowing softly like embers submerged beneath water. They floated in the darkness, unanchored to any body, yet unmistakably alive. They blinked in perfect unison. Then the whispers came again, rising from the stone. The team retreated, stumbling over each other as a wave of terror washed through them, not like normal fear but something deeper, primal, as if the human mind recognized the presence of something it was never meant to witness. The mountains moaned. The stone vibrated beneath their boots. And the glowing eyes drifted closer. Later, in the debrief, one surviving soldier wrote that the darkness inside the mountain moved like a living tide. He claimed they saw Henley among the shadows, his body thin as parchment, his eyes glowing gold. "He called to us," the soldier wrote. "Not with his voice. With our own thoughts." They fled without firing a shot. No one returned to Sparrow again. The mountains never released the missing soldiers. Their names turned into case files, then numbers, then sealed records filed under non-recoverable personnel. But the classified archive held more than reports. It held maps. Cave mapping drones deployed months later revealed a network of subterranean tunnels stretching miles beneath the Hindu Kush, branching like a circulatory system. At the center lay a cavern so vast the drone's floodlights could not find the ceiling. Its walls were covered in markings resembling eyes. Thousands of them. Carved in spirals, stacked in grids, etched into massive pillars shaped like ribs of an ancient god. The carvings were not decorative. They were warnings. Or prayers. Or perhaps instructions. Drone audio recorded deep rhythmic pulses like breathing. Analysts dismissed it as geological resonance. But the vibrations aligned perfectly with peaks in electromagnetic interference recorded the night sparrow fell. At the cavern's far end floated two immense lights, brighter than any others recorded. They pulsed slowly as if waking from a long sleep. When the drone moved closer, its camera feed went black. Seconds later, the drone dropped from the sky as if struck by an invisible force. Its final telemetry showed a sudden spike in gravitational distortion. Something massive had moved. And something older than humanity had opened its eyes. The file's final note read, "The entities are not contained within the caves. The caves are contained within them. The mountains still stand. Patrols still move through Kunar's passes, unaware of what stirs deep beneath their feet. Sometimes at night, soldiers report faint lights hovering inside the cliffs. They dismiss them as reflections or animal eyes. But those who know the legend understand. The deep watchers do not appear unless hungry. They feed on fear, drawing men closer until they willingly walk into the stone. And somewhere beneath the Hindu Kush, in the sunless chambers where ancient gods once slept, new pairs of glowing eyes open one by one. They are learning to see again. And they are waiting.